How's it going, guys? And welcome to this week's episode of the Red Den podcast. And on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about failure because it is something I have done a lot this week. I have failed a lot this week, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And here's why. People have this thing, this almost stigma around failure as if it's such a bad thing, and those are the people who often fail to realize the power behind failing at something has, and what failing actually means. Someone who fails is someone who is trying something new. Someone who fails is someone with some kind of ambition, but it isn't quite going the way they wanted it to. Failure defined is quite literally a lack of success. People are scared of failure. They are scared of doing something wrong. They are scared of looking silly, and they're scared of what failing might mean for them in perspective of the people around them, right? Does that make sense? But what they are failing to understand or realize, or are just blind to, more so ignorant to, is that every time you fail, you can learn from it. And I would much rather be the person who fails and learns from it, fails often but learns from it, than fails few times and feels sorry for themselves and drowns themselves in their own self-pity and craves the attention of others by saying and talking about that one thing that they did wrong 5 years ago and how it ruined their life and all of this shit. It can be very, very easy to get yourself stuck in that horrible loop of self-pity, and it can easily lead to becoming a narcissist. Does that make sense? I think it does. I would much rather be the person who is able to fail multiple times. I have failed a lot in my life, right? But every time I have failed, I have always taken it on the chin. Or every time I have gotten something wrong, because failed can sometimes feel like a very harsh word, and sometimes the wrong word for every situation. But when I have done something wrong or gotten something wrong, I have never once thought of it as a bad thing. I have always looked at it as a lesson, as something that I can learn from and apply to the future, to the next time, to prevent it from happening again. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm saying that more and more. Okay. Let me try to simplify this in how it makes sense in my head. When it comes to failure, there is two types of people, right? There is person number one, being the person who will fail, who will feel bad about themselves, who will go down a rabbit hole of self-pity and just drown themselves in that one thing that they might have gotten wrong, and they will get stuck there, and they will keep talking about it, to crave the attention of the people around them who might give that attention to them, but ultimately that person will be labeled a narcissist, labeled weak, and it's because they are, in my opinion. And they will lose the people closest to them. Because the more you keep banging on about the one thing or a couple of things that went wrong, the less over time that people are willing, the realistic people, the people who have a grip on the world, the less they are willing to sit there and put up with the nonsense of, oh, feel sorry for me, I did this wrong, I'm such a bad person, blah 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 blah. Shut the fuck up. Honestly, really, it's not that deep. All right, you need to understand that making a mistake, doing something wrong, and if you can understand that what you did was wrong, this is important. If you are able to understand that what you did was wrong, great. Move on, learn from it, and keep pushing forward. That's person number one, the person who feels bad about themselves. Or there's person number two. This is the person who learns from their mistake, who makes a mistake or does something wrong, and they take it on the chin, they roll with the punches, and they sit back and analyze what they have done. And they go, oh, okay, I see that what I did here was wrong. This is why it was wrong. How can I prevent that from happening again? Does that make sense? For an example, should I say, this week I was meant to work out 3 times. I didn't work out once. Why? Because I didn't manage my time well enough. Because I didn't care enough. I didn't care enough to push myself to do it. My reasoning behind working out isn't strong enough at this current moment in time. I would rather be stronger, healthier, and fitter, but I am too comfortable in the way I am now that I am still carrying around this element of laziness. And I can't do anything about the fact that I didn't work out 3 times this week. So what am I going to do? I'm going to plan set days next week, looking at my work roster, because that's a big thing. In my head, I work 40 hours a week. So I'm going to have to look at my work roster and go, okay, well, where can I fit in these 3 workouts around that? And move it on from there. And then just push myself to go. Like I know I want to do, and like I know I can do, and I know every time I do go, I will feel better for it, and I feel amazing, and I want to get these results. I just want it bad enough. I need to want it bad enough, and I need patience. Patience, lack of patience. That's where I failed as well. Huh? That makes sense. I'm just unpacking this now. I marked out all the things. I went to a cafe, Rustic Buva in Tralee. I went to that cafe. Great coffee. And I sat down on Friday and I wrote down where I failed this week. And I was like, this is what I'm going to talk about on the podcast. But here we are. And I'm unpacking it now. I'm fully unpacking it now. And I'm realizing, oh, right. Well, that's why I didn't work out. And if you are wondering how you can be person number 2, here is how my blueprint looks. Here's how I view failure. As I've already mentioned about 60,000 times, failure is a lesson, right? Firstly, you must understand that you cannot change what has already happened. You cannot change the past, but you can prevent it from happening again in the future. Control the controllables. And in this circumstance, your current present actions is the controllable here. You can control what you do from this moment onwards once you have made that mistake. Boom. You make that mistake and you look at it and go, okay, well shit. How does this not happen again? That's the person number 2 mentality, okay? You need to learn from it, yeah? You have to have the maturity to take responsibility for what you failed at. To understand that what you have done is wrong, and then to pick it apart and look at the actions that led to the failure, and then figure out what actions you could have done differently to lead to success. Does that quite make sense? Every time you fail in life, you should dwell on it for enough time for you to understand the lesson that was in that failure. Because that lesson has more of an impact than you could ever imagine. The lesson that you learn from the failures that you have in your life will not only impact your life going forward, but it will allow you to have the extra knowledge to be able to impact the lives of the ones you loved going forward, your children, your significant other, the people around you. You can teach them, you can share this lesson that you have learned from a simple mistake. And my examples for this can be something so small as doing a barbecue, and perhaps you cooked the meat the wrong way the first time and it didn't taste as good. You failed, but you've learned now the next time you need to turn it quicker, because otherwise you're going to have charcoaled edges or whatever, right? There are so many things on a day-to-day basis that you might get wrong, fail at, make a mistake, and learn from it, right? Sometimes you're not even realizing that you're doing it. It's such a simple thing. Such a simple thing to do. You want to boil your eggs so that they are perfectly not runny, not hard. That sweet spot right in between. So the first time you boil it for like 6 minutes, right? Get the water boiling, boil it for 6 minutes. Let's go. That doesn't work out because it goes too hard, right? And then you boil it for like 3 minutes. It's like, the white's cooked, but the egg's too runny in the middle. The yolk is too runny. So you try again, and you go for 4. Or to speed up that process, in this example, we're cooking the egg. I don't know how this has become an egg analogy. This was not in the plan for this podcast, but it just came to mind. You want an egg to be that perfect, medium, slightly soft, slightly hard-boiled. So, you cook it the first time, you fuck it up. You've made the mistake. Whoopie-doo. You move on. Next time, you look it up. You find out, it's about 4 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It's about 4 minutes to get that perfect yolk consistency, right? Then you've learned from it, right? That's how easy it is to learn from a mistake. To the people who fuck up and then dwell on it and just beat themselves up about a silly mistake that you've made. Why? It is the most counterproductive thing that you can do. Sit back right now and think about that. Okay? Think about it. It's frustrating to me because there's people I see around me in my daily life that are overly critical, self-deprecating, and self-destructive with what they might do. They will do something, do it wrong, and then completely self-destruct. And I sit there and will reassure them that no, look, you've made that mistake. Move on, learn from it. It's as simple as that. Sorry, I've hit off the microphone there. I don't know if that has created a loud bang in your ears. Sorry if it has, but I hope this all made sense. I hope it did. And me failing a lot this week and sitting down and trying to record this podcast, this is my 5th attempt at trying to say what I really wanted to say about failure and say what I really meant and what value I wanted to come from this podcast. This is about my 5th time trying to record it, and I feel like this one, I've got that message across. Ultimately, the goal of this podcast was to make those people who aren't aware that failure is not a bad thing. You're a human. Humans fail. And the humans that do fail are the humans that are trying. I would rather be a human that fails, who tries and fails consistently, than one who does fuck all and doesn't fail. At least I'm trying. Like this, for example. Who knows? This episode might flop. At least I tried. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, go show some love on all the platforms you can. Lots of love. Safe travels. Stay awesome. Stay frosty. Keep smiling. Good vibes. All that stuff. Peace.